Today's lesson is on solving multi-step inequalities. For our first example, we're solving two-step inequalities. For A, we're going to solve 5x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 11, and then we're going to graph the solution. So the first step that we're going to do is to undo the subtraction. So in our problem, we're subtracting 4, so we're going to add 4 to solve. When we add 4 to both sides, we're going to get 5x is greater than or equal to 15. And now we need to divide both sides by 5 because we're going to undo the multiplication. When we divide each side by 5, we're going to get that x is greater than or equal to 3. So now to graph our solution, we're going to have a closed circle at 3, and then we want to shade the numbers that would be greater than or equal to 3, which would be the numbers to the right. Those numbers would be greater than 3. For B, we're going to solve y divided by negative 6 plus 7 is less than 9, and then we're going to graph our solution. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 7 from each side. We are adding 7 in the problem, so we need to undo the addition by subtracting 7. When we subtract 7 from each side, we're going to get that y divided by negative 6 is less than 2. And our next step will be to multiply both sides by negative 6. Remember that when we multiply by a negative, we need to reverse our symbol of our inequality. So our inequality was less than, and now it becomes greater than. Once we solve each side, we're going to get that y is greater than negative 12. Now we need to graph this solution. So at negative 12, we're going to have an open circle because our symbol is greater than. And then we're going to shade to the right because the numbers to the right are greater than negative 12. Now we have an additional example. You can pause the video and try them on your own, or you may follow along. Solve the inequality and graph the solution. So for number 1, we have 4b minus 1 is less than 7. So our first step would be to add 1 to each side. And now we're going to have 4b is less than 8. Our next step will be to divide by 4. So we're going to get that b is less than 2. So now for our number line, we're going to have 2, and then to the right we have 3 and 4, and then to the left we'd have 1 and 0. Since our symbol is less than, we're going to have an open circle at 2, and then the numbers that are less than 2 would be the numbers on the left, so we'll shade to the left. Now for number 2, we have 8 plus 9c is greater than or equal to negative 28. First, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. And we're going to get that 9c is greater than or equal to, and negative 28 minus 8 would be plus a negative, so that would be negative 36. Now we're going to divide both sides by 9. And we're going to have that c is greater than or equal to negative 4. Now we need to graph this, so we're going to have negative 4 on our number line, and then to the right we'd have negative 3 and negative 2, and then to the left we'll have negative 5 and negative 6. Our symbol is greater than or equal to, so at negative 4 we're going to have a closed circle, and the numbers that are greater than or equal to negative 4 would be the numbers to the right. So we will shade to the right. And now for number 3, we have n divided by negative 2 plus 11 is greater than 12. First, we're going to subtract 11 on each side. And we're going to get n divided by negative 2 is greater than 1, because 12 minus 11 is 1. Now we need to multiply both sides by a negative. So we're going to have n divided by negative 2, and we're going to multiply by negative 2. And since we're multiplying by a negative, we need to reverse our inequality symbol, so we're going to have less than, and then we had 1 times negative 2. So now we're going to have that n is less than negative 2. Since our symbol is less than, we will have an open circle. So on our number line, we're going to have negative 2, negative 1, and 0. And then to the left, we'd have negative 3 and negative 4. And we said we'd have an open circle at negative 2. And then the numbers that are less than negative 2 would be the numbers to the left. So we'll shade to the left. Now we'll look at our second example, and we're solving multi-step inequalities. So which graph represents the solution of negative 7 times the quantity x plus 3 is less than or equal to 28? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve our inequality. The first thing we need to do when we solve this is we need to use the distributive property. So we have negative 7 times x, and then negative 7 times 3. So we use the distributive property. We have negative 7x minus 21. And that would then be less than or equal to 28. Now we'll solve this just like we did the previous problems. So we'll add 21 to both sides, and we'll get negative 7x is less than or equal to 49. And now we're going to divide by negative 7. When we divide by a negative, we need to reverse our symbol. So now instead of less than or equal to, we'll have greater than or equal to. So then we're going to get that x is greater than or equal to negative 7. Now that we have our inequality, we need to see which graph would go along with this inequality. Since we have greater than or equal to with a closed circle at negative 7, and you can see that A and B both have a closed circle at negative 7. So now we need to see which one is shaded correctly. We want the numbers that are greater than or equal to negative 7. So that would be choice B. So B would be the one that represents this solution. Now we have an additional example. You can pause the video and try it on your own, or you may follow along. Solve the inequality and graph the solution. So for number 4, we have 2 times the quantity k minus 5, and that is less than 6. So we'll use the distributive property first. So we'll have 2 times k, which is 2k, and then we do 2 times 5, which is 10, but then we have this minus sign here, so we're going to have minus 10, and that would be less than 6. Now we will add 10 to both sides, and we're going to get that 2k is less than 16. Now we will divide both sides by 2, and we'll get that k is less than 8. Now we're going to graph, so we're going to have 8 on our number line, and then 9 and 10, and then to the left we'll have 7 and 6. Our symbol is less than, so we'll have an open circle at 8, and we want the numbers less than 8, so we're going to shade to the left. Now for number 5, we have negative 4 times the quantity n minus 10, and that will be less than 32. We will use the distributive property to start solving this inequality. So we're going to have negative 4 times n, that's negative 4n, and negative 4 times 10 would be negative 40, but we also have this minus sign. So really this is negative 4 times negative 10, which would be plus 40. And that is going to be less than 32. Now we will subtract 40 from each side. And we're going to get negative 4n is less than negative 8. Now we're going to divide each side by negative 4. So we're going to have negative 4n, and we're dividing by negative 4. And since we're dividing by a negative, we need to reverse our symbol. So we're going to have is greater than negative 8 divided by negative 4. This will then give us n is greater than 2. So now for our graph, we're going to have 2, and then to the right we have 3 and 4, and to the left we'd have 1 and 0. Our symbol is greater than, so we're going to have an open circle at 2. And then we want the numbers greater than 2, so those would be the numbers to the right. And now for number 6, we have -3 is less than or equal to 5/10 times the quantity 8 plus y. First, we're going to use the distributive property. So we're going to have -3 is less than or equal to 5/10 times 8 would be 4. And then we have 5/10 times y, which is 5/10 y. So plus 5/10 times y. Now we can subtract 4 from each side. And -3 minus 4 would be plus a negative, so that would be -7 is less than or equal to 5/10 y. And now we're going to divide both sides by 5/10. -7 divided by 5/10 would be -14, and that would be less than or equal to y, which we can also write this as y is greater than or equal to -14. So now on our number line we have -14, and then we'll have -13 to the right and -12 to the right, and then to the left we'll have -15 and -16. Our symbol is greater than or equal to, so we'll have a closed circle at -14, and the numbers that are greater than -14 would be to the right. So we'd have a closed circle at -14, and we'd shade to the right because all those numbers would be greater than or equal to -14. Don't forget to fill out your notes, and remember to watch the video again if needed.